Today on Let's Talk Schools, we're discussing the Bridge to Success plan and how it's making a huge impact across Fulton County schools. Welcome to another edition of Let's Talk Schools. Today we're going to talk about federal programs, and very specifically, we're going to talk about something called Bridge to Success. You know, I love the vision of Bridge to Success. I can just visualize it in my head. Montrell Bell is the Director of Federal Programs. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about your background and how you've become the Director of Federal Programs in Fulton County Schools.
Wow, I have a very diverse background here in Fulton. I started as a teacher, and then I worked some in professional learning as basically a teacher coach. And then I moved into our pre-K program where I was our coordinator for early childhood. And my background in federal programs came when we had a huge federal literacy grant. And so ever since we did that grant a few years ago, I've always been interested in federal funding and just the impact that large grants can make on the district. And so I actually thought about this position and was wondering, would we have somebody to help us? And so that piqued my interest in this. And so I'm just very honored to serve.
Well, I'm actually really excited that you applied because you've been doing a phenomenal job. And I know with federal grants, there's always a lot of bureaucracy and a lot of checks and balances and accountability that's associated with it. And I will tell you, across the entire region, people look to us and your leadership and how we've been managing our federal program grants. So thank you.
Thank you.
So let's get into it.
Let's go.
Bridge to Success. What a great vision. What does it mean?
Wow.
Tell us all about it.
So the Bridge to Success plan was developed as a way to harness all of the federal funding that we got from the federal government with our ESSER funding. We have ESSER 1, ESSER 2, and ESSER 3. And so the vision that the district had to bring all of that funding together to create programs that would impact across the district, across schools, impact staff members, is basically the whole concept behind Bridge to Success, to make sure that we can bring our students along and use that funding in a way that targets the needs of our students in the district.
So when you mentioned ESSER funding,
Yes.
Is ESSER funding a typical grant that school districts get? Is it related to something specific? Can you give us a little bit more detail about it?
Absolutely. So, of course, when we are in the pandemic still. And so the federal government back in 2020, in March of 2020, decided that school systems and states needed additional assistance to help mitigate the spread of COVID-19, and then to also fill some funding gaps and make some decisions around needs that students had as it related to learning recovery, and making sure that we were all still able to operate and meet those needs of students. And so the funding, as I mentioned, started March 2020. We got another round of funding for the summer program that we're implementing here in district later on. And then in April of 2021, we got our third round of funding. And so as I mentioned before, the vision that the district has with Bridge to Success is that we will do everything we can to support the needs of our students and families and staff, and also come out of this pandemic or prepare for this life beyond the pandemic to make sure everyone has what they need academically, emotionally, socially, safety-wise, just almost in every category that you can think of where there would be needs for students and families. And so it's a very comprehensive program. And again, federal time bound because it was funded by the federal government,
Right.
But at the same time, enough funding to really meet some of our critical needs.
And I know that we had lots of robust conversation as a leadership team within the organization. We wanted to do some big things. We didn't want to just pay the light bill or, buy masks. We certainly did all those things, but we wanted to take that funding, that once in a lifetime funding, and do something transformational in our district. And that's kind of what the Bridge plan does. It puts these big ideas together. Is that right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, one of the biggest projects that we have is literacy, transforming our literacy for our younger students all the way up through high school. And so what we made sure of with this plan and with the funding which was so robust. We were able to train our school leaders, all of our teachers who teach ELA, and then also provide the resources that they need. So we also adopted an ELA textbook program we delayed our original adoption, if you remember, the public may remember, but we held off until we could implement this program to make sure our resources are completely aligned to our Science of Reading program, and that the students have everything they need from pre-K actually all the way up to 12th grade. And so those have been two very large initiatives that we've been able to do.
I know in speaking with colleagues, superintendents from across the country, when I told them that I was going back to training after 28 years in the field of education, 18 years of being a superintendent, to relearn how to teach students to read, they looked at me kind of odd. But it has been transformational for me. I have learned so much about reading instruction, writing instruction, and the importance of vocabulary, and that could not have been possible had it not been for the federal funds that we received and leadership of people such as yourself organizing it and making sure that we're using those funds in compliance with the law. And I know that's been kind of tricky because we've had some different ebbs and flow of guidance and changes in direction and how we spend the money from the federal government. Can you talk about that just a little bit?
Absolutely, yes, and you are correct. I do think that we have had a few items where we had to just wait for guidance to make sure that we were following the guidelines. And I think that the state has been a great help in terms of making sure that districts like ours were definitely adhering to the intent of the funding. But one thing I will say, and I think it's important to know, that a lot of times we feel like we have to operate within the old mindset of the COVID funding, which was to make sure we can plan and prepare and mitigate the spread of COVID-19. Well, one of the changes that actually has happened is that we better equip ourselves as a district and also our students beyond COVID. And
Right.
so some of the other initiatives we had as far as expanding our CTAE programs, improving our virtual instruction, I think are great examples of things that we are able to do now to prepare us for beyond the pandemic. And so some of those supports that we have put into our plan, we were already on track for the change in the guidance,
Right.
but I think our students will be in a much better position post-COVID.
So what happens, how long is the grant for? When does it end? And then what happens beyond the grant funding? How do we sustain the improvements, the new direction that we're going in as a school district?
So as I mentioned, we have 3 different funding streams. And so the first funding stream is ESSER 1. That was our CARES Act funding. It will sunset on September 30th of this year. And then we have our second funding stream, which funded our focus plan, our high dosage and small group support that we gave our students. That will end it's actually the end date is this year, but we have a carryover period for the next year.
Okay.
And then finally, in our American Rescue Plan, that end date is FY24. And so we have some time to implement our plans and put ourselves in a position to be able to withstand some of those challenges that we've had as a result of the pandemic.
So with the funding, we talked about literacy instruction and essentially retraining everybody on the science of reading. What the science says is the most effective way to get non-readers to reading and comprehending information. And I truly believe as a superintendent that's going to be transformational. What are the other kind of big rocks, the big items that the plan includes?
Oh, wow. So I mentioned earlier that we also made a significant investment in our textbook adoption.
Okay.
And in addition to adopting those textbooks, we had so many teachers, thousands of teachers this summer who participated in textbook training. And so we put funding towards making sure those teachers can at least have 2 days of support with getting acquainted with those materials. And so we were able to provide stipends for them to do that. But we've also built in professional development beyond this summer so that once they get their materials, they can have time to train next year on some of the other things that they need. The other big investment that we've made has been in our expanded programs. And so, as I mentioned earlier, we will have a stronger virtual program with FAVE, our Fulton Academy of Virtual Excellence, and then also our Fulton Virtual program that we have where we offer classes to our students. We've made a significant investment there. Our CTAE program will have expansions from elementary, middle, and high school. And we're also going to be able to provide CTA instruction in our middle college, in which we have opened up. We will be revamping our Old McLaren site and offering a partnership with Atlanta Technical College for students who want to get some type of a dual certification from the technical college and in high school. And I mean, those are three big things, but I do think students will be most excited about our enhanced experiences coming up. Our pre-K through 8th graders will resume their field trip opportunities. And so our teaching museum coordinator has teamed up with several local vendors here to begin offering those opportunities for students to once again get out into the metro Atlanta area and see some of the culture and history that we have here.
Excellent. Getting some real life experiences of some of the great facilities and venues that we have here in the region. So let me ask you this. I've been hearing a lot of discussion about tutoring programs before school, after school, weekends. Is that being paid for out of this funding source? And how do people learn more about how we're spending the money and what things are available as resources to them?
So our high dosage small group support, and as well as our summer school, was also funded through our Bridge to Success funds, our ESSER II funding. And so one of the things that parents will be able to notice when they go to their child's school is they will be invited if their child needs additional support. We have provided a small group parapro in each elementary school to provide small group and one-on-one tutoring in their schools. And then we've also provided funding for our extended day programs, which have taken on numerous formats. Some students need support before school. Some students needed support after school. Some students can only come to a program on Saturday. And so depending on the needs of the students at a particular school, parents can contact their school administrators to determine what kind of program they are offering. Then they will sign up their kid for whichever, what their need is. We've even had virtual support. We've had vendors to provide virtual support to students who can't stay after school. They maybe have to be at home. And so this funding has provided us with that flexibility to give schools to determine what their students need and how they can provide that opportunity for them.
Right. So what happens when the grant period ends? How does this continue post-grant period? Do we apply for new grants, or what's the plan?
Well, what we hoped in our planning is that we have put our schools and our students in a position to be able to rebound effectively, so that the funding that we already had in our district will sustain the students who are in need. So what we found through the pandemic is that so many kids had significant learning loss because they were at home and teaching themselves, or however they were getting instruction.
Right.
So what the plan that we have implemented is the hope to make sure they have the opportunity to get their footing again, to get those foundational skills, so that when we return post-pandemic or post-funding, that we will be able to support them with our regular programs. All the programs that we have talked about primarily have already been funded in Fulton, but maybe not at the same scale. So we were offering summer school, we were offering extended learning programs, but we didn't have as many students in those days that needed the program.
Right.
Now we do. We will still continue to have Title I funding. We will still continue to have district funding. And so it is our hope and our dream that once we finish with this funding, that we will have students back at a normal scale that can be supported by the funds that we already have.
Right. Kind of reminds me of getting some extra vitamins. You might be feeling a little bit, we're struggling a little bit, so the federal government gave us some money, some vitamins, to kind of get back on track and get healthy again as a school community. So let me ask you this. We always talk about we're transparent, and we put everything out there. We want people to know that we're spending and we're using the precious resources that we have effectively in accordance with law. Where do people go to find out more information about how the money's being spent, how we're being held accountable for it, and all that sort of thing?
We have a place on our website, www.fultonschools.org/Bridge to Success. They can go there, they can find our financial documents, they can find out information about the initiatives we're offering, and then they can also see some of the initiatives that have taken place. They can get video clips, downloads, and even one-pagers to provide them with more information about what we have done so far and what we'll be doing as we implement our Bridge Plan.
Thank you so much for the timely information. Thank you for joining me at Let's Talk Schools. And most of all, thank you for helping us build a bridge to success for our students and staff members.
Thank you.
Folks, thank you for joining another session of Let's Talk Schools. And now, let's go around the district in 90 seconds. That's it for our show this week. Let's keep the conversation going. We'd love to hear from you on our social media platforms. And join us next time on Let's Talk Schools. Thank you so much for watching.